Yeah, very pleasant morning. In previous class, we have discussed about the cells and structures, action potential, resting potential, what is human physiology and human anatomy. In today's class, we are going to discuss on the topic of ECG, EEG, and EMG, and also what is sodium potassium pump. The sodium potassium pump is a protein that is found in the plasma membrane of the cells. It is responsible for maintaining the concentration gradient of sodium and potassium ions across the membrane. The pump uses ATP energy to pump 3 sodium ion out of the cell for every 2 potassium ion pumped into the cells. Electrodes are used to measure the activity of the cells, including the sodium potassium pump. There are two types of electrodes: microelectrodes and macroelectrodes. Microelectrodes are very small and are used to measure the activity of the individual cells, whereas macroelectrodes are larger and are used to measure the activity of a group of cells. What is a group of cells? Forms a tissue. These electrodes can be used to measure the electrical activity of the cells, such as resting potential and action potential. Now we can discuss on the topic of the ECG called electrocardiogram. We can through the ECG we can get the heart activity of the human body. What is an ECG? An ECG, electrocardiogram, is a test that measures the electrical activity of the heart. It is a non-invasive test that involves placing electrode on the skin of the chest, arms and legs. The electrodes are connected to an ECG machine which records the electrical signals produced by the heart. The ECG machine produces a graph which shows the electrical activity of the heart over time. The graph shows different stages of cardiac cycle, which includes PQRS complex and T wave, simply known as PQRST wave. These waves represent the depolarization and repolarization of the atria and ventricles of the heart. The simple representing block diagram of the ECG we can see here, through which we can the protection circuit and the lead selector, which can in turn is connected to the instrumentation amplifier, through which can filter and to the final amplifier. The final amplifier is connected to the oscilloscope and to the pen motor. Through the pen motor we can get the PQRST wave as an output, through which we can get the output of the heart activity of a human being. An ECG waveform, P wave. This is the first wave in the ECG and represents the depolarization of the atria. It is typically small and rounded. The QRS complex. This complex consists of 3 waves: the Q wave, R wave, and S wave, and represents the depolarization of the ventricles. The QRS complex is usually the largest wave in the ECG. And T wave, this wave represents the repolarization of the ventricles. It is typically a slightly rounded wave that follows the QRS complex. And U wave, this wave is less commonly seen in the standard ECG and represents the repolarization of Purkinje fibers in the ventricles. The U wave is typically a small rounded wave that follows the T wave, and followed by the EEG is nothing but electroencephalogram that measures the electrical activity of the brain. It involves placing small flat metal electrode on the scalp to detect the electrical impulse produced by the brain's neuron. These impulses are then recorded and analyzed by a computer to create a visual representation of the brain's electrical activity, which can be used to diagnose various brain disorders. An EEG is a non-invasive and painless test that typically takes around 30 to 60 minutes to complete. During the test, the patient may ask to lie down. The patient may ask to lie down and relax with eyes closed or open to perform certain tasks or activities to simulate the brain activity. The recorded EEG can then be analyzed by a trained healthcare professional to detect any abnormal patterns or activity that may indicate a brain disorder, such as epilepsy, sleeping disorders, or brain injuries. EEG is a widely used diagnostic tool in neurology and psychiatry and can provide valuable insights to the brain function activity. The block diagram of an EEG represents the scalp electrode which can directly placed in the head of the patient, through which we can connect to the instrumentation amplifier and active high pass filter and low pass filter and notch filter. The filter is used to eradicate the unwanted activity of the brain, and through which we can connect it to the amplifier and a DAC card. Through the computer we can get the output. Thank you.